Slip, said Adam between aggressive kisses. Are you sure? The woman in question was atop him, pulling her top down her muscular shoulders and grinding her hips aggressively against him. Adam was definitely not opposed to the idea of his beautiful magnetic girlfriend, or, now that he thought about it, fiancée riding him senseless. The rate at which he collected his cabal of women made his head spin, and it only spun faster that they all seemed to jump instantly to the idea of marriage as soon as he told them about his plan with Classy. He dated his late wife for nearly 2 years before they decided to get married, and he'd even felt that was fast at the time. He thought back to the day he'd met Ferry in the mountains over 2 months ago. To him, the months felt like years. Maybe they set upon him so quickly because of the nature of being a commando. Life wasn't guaranteed, and if you wanted time with someone before either of you met a terrible end at the hand of roach pirates, Alliance and Consortium Special Forces, or even human resistance fighters, you took the opportunities you wanted, and held on to them for dear life. His eyes trailed up the delta of the parted uniform that Slip was actively pulling over her shoulders, as she squeezed his hips with her powerful thighs. She slowly parted her uniform atop him, her perfect chest spilling out, and swaying softly with her aggressive motions as she pulled the sleeves over her wrists behind her. She told him about her breasts being a point of issue with her self-image, but for the life of him he couldn't understand why. The large, handful-sized orbs, topped with royal purple nipples atop the magneto skin, only served to stir him to action more. In that moment, a realization hit him. He didn't actually care about the exponentially increasing breakneck pace that his group's relationship had taken. For the first time in nearly 5 years, he was happy. He had 4 women that adored him, each in their own unique way, a job that fit his skill set perfectly, and a home among the stars. He had long since surrendered to the idea of accepting and reciprocating his flock of women's affections, and had even told them he loved them. At the time, he said that more out of instinct and a desire to latch onto someone, anyone. Now, though, every time he put his thoughts to Ferry, Cell, Slip, or Classy, all he felt was warmth and a desire to protect them. They were his family, now and forever. He reached up behind her head, intertwining his fingers with her ink-black hair, and pulled her down for a deep kiss, as he felt her hands exploring his chest, before awkwardly jerking at his chest plate. Exclaimed Adam, as he was jerked several inches off the ground and bodily dropped against the deck. How'd you get these off? Asked Slip, now topless atop him. Hang on, he chuckled, tapping the button on his wrist panel to deactivate the magnetic locks that held his armor in place. With a soft clatter, the plates fell off him, Slip rapidly jerking his top plate off as she gazed hungrily into his eyes. Her hands explored his chest, softly massaging his pectorals as she worked her way ever closer to his zipper. Finding it, she braced her left hand against his collarbone and slowly worked her way down until the zipper sat just below his navel. Hello there, you lovely people! This is your favourite friendly neighbourhood axe speaking. The reason why I've invaded your regularly scheduled Purple Alien Harem show is to tell you that this chapter has a naughty sex scene in it, which the narrator person won't narrate on YouTube, no matter how nicely I've been axing him. However, in between his screams of terror and cries of mercy, he has informed me that the full unabridged chapter can be heard on Patreon at the £5 tier. Honestly, I thought British people money would make things complicated, but it's actually easy, since it converts into your home currency. Even better, there are other tiers with extra content, so there's other goodies to scratch that itch. You should also like the video, subscribe and leave a comment, or else someone is going to have an accident. Anyway, that should be it. It's time to bury the hatchet on this one. You're free to continue listening. Just remember, I'm watching. The following weeks passed by in a blur for Adam, feeling like he was being slung around the planet on a gigantic bungee cord, as the Duchess and her daughter went about their political and business dealings. In one city, he could have sworn that he saw a group of human teenagers mingling with some Shorvanti out on the town. His head momentarily spun as he saw a large chocolate-skinned young man leading two Rakiri, 3 Shorvanti, a very young-looking and petite Indian woman, and what appeared to be a dirty blonde, average-built young man making what were decidedly bedroom eyes at one of his Shorvanti counterparts. Nixie had caught his gaze and mentioned in passing that they were wearing the uniforms from a old boarding school. As much as he desperately wanted to stop and ask the human teen some questions, he really couldn't. They were on their way to catch a flight home after completing a deal that the Duchess had wanted her daughter present for the machinations of. His watch beeped softly as he lay in bed in the wee hours of the morning, having decided that tonight would be the night he looked into the Duchess, given that they hadn't faced any assassins in the month and a half since arriving. His group had stealthily moved a second bed into his small room, pushing them together so they made one super bed that the quintet could use for one massive cuddle puddle. He extricated himself from the tangle of limbs, Sel snoring loudly from where she had pressed herself against his front tonight. He mentally chuckled to himself as he stealthily made it to the end of his bed, remembering how she managed to convince Slip into a freeway several nights prior. For the most part, his women were affectionate to one another, but he was the primary sexual focus. Sel, being Sel, was decidedly unhappy with this, and repeatedly made romantic and physical moves on his other women. So far, she talked, kissed, and worked her way into Ferry and Slip's pants independently of him. The women had a relentlessly upbeat attitude that pervaded every aspect of her life outside of firefights. Even if, at times, her lack of seriousness about anything and everything grated on him, you couldn't help but fall for her more and more every day. Frequently, she had also served as the referee for Adam and Slip's regular morning sparring practices, ensuring that exactly the right amount of drugs were administered to fix their bruises. She had also decided to step into the ring against him once or twice, wanting to use the taser knives on him. He'd rapidly found that she was his kryptonite in hand-to-hand combat. Her lithe figure and unassuming bubbly personality belied the fact that she was an absolute monster in close quarters. Where Adam and Slip were relatively equally matched in the ring, Sel was almost inhumanly fast, wily, and always seemed to dance just outside of his grasp before closing in for the kill. If she ever decided to take up fencing, she'd absolutely demolish any human opponent in a match, at least if he went off her knife-fighting skills. But now, his petite menace was snoring softly in bed with Klaas's arm wrapped tightly around her waist. She and Adam's penchant for snoring had initially unnerved the group, until Soa made a nearly hour-long presentation on how human and Naikru's soft palates and sinuses were similar and different, going into extensive detail on how and why snoring happened, and how Sholvanti were weird for not snoring. About 2 minutes into the presentation, Slip had gotten up to leave, but Sel told her to sit back down. She was fulfilling a mandatory monthly health brief for the team. No one complained about snoring after that, for fear of another expertly crafted presentation taking away their already small amounts of free time. Shaking the thoughts from his head with a smirk, Adam crept silently to the door, pulling it open and peeking out into the dark, opulent hallway, and ensuring it was clear. He was dressed in the standard issue PT shorts and form-fitting t-shirt, hoping that if he was caught, he could just play it off as him getting lost in the positively massive manor house, while on a quest to find the toilet at 2 a.m. Noiselessly, he crept with bare feet across the carpeted floor, checking every direction and doorway he passed for lingering ducal guards and staff. He reasoned that since it was 5 minutes or so before the next guard rotation, all of them, save for the grounds guards, would be in the security room, going over briefings and plans for the upcoming shift. His goal was simple in concept, but hard in execution. He wanted to make it to the Duchess's personal study, hack into her computer, and look for any data relating to the Silver Suns, male trafficking, or other crimes. He'd also see if she had any hard copy ledgers or books that could be incriminating, but this secret squirrel bullshit was never his strong suit. He padded his way through the halls, only having to dodge one patrol of 2 ducal guards, clearly tired from their shift, and now intent on making it to the security room. He stood in front of the massive, palatial wooden door to the Duchess's study, and tested the door handle once, finding it surprisingly unlocked. He worked his way into the room, easing the old, metal-studded door open, and shut as silently as he could. He quickly rounded the large desk in the rear of the room, tapping the touchscreen of the computer that was attached to the desk, finding it locked. "Fuck," he muttered under his breath. "Okay, if I were a self-important noble, what password would I use?" He rapidly typed through, inputting the woman's birthday, along with the ever-useful master keys of password and password 1, and audibly sighed, placing his head against the desk as the ostentatious, leather-padded purple chair creaked beneath him. A light bulb clicked on in his head, and he decided to try the high goddess of the Sholvanti pantheon, Shamantal. Duchess Vikshali had been absolutely adamant about that being her codename over the radio, and with none of Adam's other options working, he gave it a shot. Unsurprisingly, it didn't work, and he was on his final attempt aloud before it would lock him out, and he decided to go for broke. The computer chirped happily as it accepted Shamantal 1 and opened the desktop for him to dig through. He pumped his fist once and settled into digging through her personal computer. He'd made his way through several mundane, unlocked account records, and a folder labelled Operations that just held records of the Duchess's recent business acquisitions and upper echelon hires. He moved to a folder titled Backups and tapped it open before a voice pierced the silence. "Adam, is it?" the Duchess asked, flanked by several guards. "A bit odd, you being here." "Well, fuck," Adam exclaimed, doing his best to appear unfazed by her sudden appearance. "This isn't the shitter." Vic Shalee chuckled darkly as she shook her head and strode to one of the several chairs that sat before her desk, groaning slightly as she settled into one. She was wearing her bedclothes, and clear bags stood out under her eyelids. "No," she said in a knowing tone. "No, this definitely is not. Would you like to know what I think?" "Not really." "Too bad," the older woman replied with a predatory grin. "I think you're working with those scum-sucking women who've been trying to have my head on a pike." "Actually, no. I was hoping you'd have some interesting files screwed away somewhere," Anne replied, looking between the guards that now flanked his desk as the Duchess crossed one leg over the other and leaned her chin on her palm. "Squirreled?" she asked, quirking a brow at the English word. "Hidden, stashed, whatever. I know you work with the Silver Suns." He was gambling, hoping that he could shake her up, or at least get a spotted denial that would confirm his suspicions. Instead, he got neither. She exhaled calmly, her eyes focusing on him. "An early business venture of mine. Quite profitable, at least until those ARI bitches decided they would fuck everything up." "So," he replied, unsure how to react. "You're admitting it?" "Ugh," she replied, dismissively waving a hand in front of him. "At this point, what's the use of denying it? Hell, I'd wear my accomplishments proudly if our empress wouldn't have my head over it." Adam was very ill at ease right now, and knew he'd fucked up. Bad. Not only had she admitted to it without any cares as to who he would tell, he was currently surrounded by the Duchess's guards, all clearly watching him, ready to act if he pulled a weapon. If she didn't have such an annoying care for the commoners, she'd know that I was providing a useful service for the Empire and her nobles. "By running drugs, gambling, and sex slavery?" Adam asked, furrowing his brow. "Yes," she replied with a nod. "Everyone has their place in society. Us noble women are bred to lead, the common woman is bred to fight our battles, and men are bred for pleasure and child-rearing." "It looks like plenty of your guys are handling that competently," Adam replied, trying to negotiate his way out of this. "Some," she replied, bouncing her head between her shoulders, "but this younger generation don't know their place. They're all caught up with this idea of male solidarity and freedom of choice. They should learn that their place is beneath a woman, serving her every need." "Kinda fucked if you ask me," Adam shrugged. "I suppose. I take great pride in breaking the will of men until they beg for a face full of cunt," she replied with a genuine smile. "And after I've had my fun, well, my girls get themselves a cute new plaything." "What happens to the ones that don't break?" Adam asked darkly, trying to come up with a way out of this rapidly deteriorating situation. "Well," she replied, leaning back in the chair, "originally I believed that everyone would break, but sadly I've learned that many young males these days don't know when to submit to their betters. They don't have a place in society, so I remove them from society." She grinned lasciviously at him, eyeing his shoulders and chest before continuing. "And you? I will enjoy breaking you." "Not happening," replied Adam, getting to his feet. "I may not have my armor, but I'll turn this manor into a bloodbath along with my team if you lay a finger on me." "Make a move, and I'll see to the execution of those fine specimens you have tucked away in your room," she replied, motioning to her guards. "You were right to submit to them, by the way. A husband should submit to his wives, after all. Even the short one is a beautiful example of Chauvante feminine superiority." Adam stared into her eyes, hoping to find any indication of her bluffing. He found none. All that stared back at him, as one of the guards shoved a bag over his head, were the eyes of a cold, calculating woman who'd had a short in her own victory. He was put in what felt like cuffs, dragged through the halls, unseen, and shoved bodily into what felt like the trunk of one of the Duchess's town cars. Feeling for his pocket, he took out the only safety net he had in this, Sir Miller's bracelet. "Ball's in your court now, ladies," he thought, as he fell for and activated the tracker, shoving the thin, braided metal clasp into his shorts through the drawstring hole, hoping whoever searched him wouldn't be thorough enough to feel around his waistband. This is going to be a bad day, isn't it? He thought, as he felt the engine come to life, and the car begin its trek to wherever they were headed.